Thanks, Elizabeth. As people across the state continue to clean up from the historic floods, it's difficult to know where to start. Joining me this morning from Servepro is Larry Blau with some tips to help you through the process. Good morning, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, a lot of people all over Rhode Island right now, we're kind of trying to be, do-it-themselvers. They were buying pumps, they were buying vacuums. When is enough and you should just call a professional? When do you know?
I think the best example I can give you is a lot of people have a small water leak, and I'm not obviously referring to the floods, and they try to get a shop vac and they extract the carpet, and then about a week later we start getting phone calls, people saying it's starting to smell. If it's starting to smell, it's time to take everything out. And I realize that given the enormity of the event, everybody's trying to do as much as they can. So the biggest thing that I recommend to everybody is get the water out. And at this point, I think it's more important to get all the materials that are wet out of your house.
So that's one of the tips once the carpet starts smelling and whatnot. What are some of the long-term, if you do the cleanup improperly, what are some of the long-term damages with mold and
Obviously,
whatnot?
I don't like to have anybody be scared about mold, but again, if things are left behind that are wet, most people deal with the floor issue. They're taking their carpeting out. They don't realize the walls have wicked up water, and until they can determine that and they know that they should cut the walls out at this point, you're going to be leaving behind moisture. When you're leaving behind moisture, obviously you start to get mold growth, and that's a big issue for everybody that they really need to be concerned about in terms of their health and the health of their home.
Now, you brought some tools to help us out that I'm sure not everybody owns. This looks like a tool from the Ghostbusters. Why don't you explain some of these things you brought in here? Simple
tools just for everybody to know. These are some fans. These are typically used on a water loss. At the outset, we put in fans and dehumidifiers after we take the water out. The fans help stir up the moisture, and the dehumidifier pulls the moisture out of the air, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, to dry people out properly. Here is another tool that's important. Again, homeowners can't find these. This is a protimeter. It allows us to put this on the floor surfaces, the wall surfaces, and check to see what is wet. So you determine how high the water went up. Most of your folks that we're dealing with, they can see a watermark, but again, sheetrock will absorb like a sponge, so you may see a water line, but yet it may be wet 6 inches or more than that. And then lastly, I brought here is a thermal imaging camera, and if you go back to the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, this picks up temperature differential. So we're able to go into a large commercial building quickly and use this, and then follow it up with the moisture meter to actually determine what is wet.
Speaking of going into large buildings, just quickly before we wrap, you guys are helping out with the Warwick Mall. Tell us how that process is going and when we can kind of expect to...
It's going very well. As a result of the size and the enormity, we've brought in crews from all over the country to help us out. Right now we are running 2 10-hour shifts. We probably have about 500 people working down there in the aggregate per day. And the biggest issue we're faced with right now is that you have a lot of stores that may not have insurance, and things need to be done, and they're not being quite as proactive at this point. So right now we're dealing with the common areas of the mall, but we're looking to get into these stores to try to speed the process up.
Larry, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate all the work you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Helping the fellow Rhode Islanders get their lives back on track. Thanks. Guys, for more tips from Servepro, head over to the website, foxprovidence.com.